What's good everyone? My name is Mike Will at m.visuals. Welcome to today's video. We're going to be doing a comparison of the Sony 70-200 Mark I and Mark II. We're going to take it out around London, but before we do that, we're just going to run through a few of the specs so you guys know some of the differences that are on these lenses. So the biggest difference as soon as I pick these two up is the weight. They look very similar, but this one weighs almost 400 grams less than the Mark I. So for me, that's a big deal. Taking this, well, actually taking this one, but hopefully taking this one in the future, traveling the world is obviously a big impact on my back. And also when shooting, sometimes I don't want to take this with me because it is so heavy, but having this one really makes a massive difference. So already making this lens very desirable for me to get. Touching on a couple of the features. So firstly, how do you tell the difference? The new Mark II 70-200 has the aperture ring, which is obviously a really nice, well, I say really nice. It's great for video. For me, it doesn't really make a difference. I'm very used to having it on my camera, but it is something that I've got used to, and I have actually shot with this a little bit before. First, it was very confusing, but towards the end of it, I was then understanding to use it a bit more. We've got about 1 million buttons on here, which half of them I don't even know what they do, but we've got obviously autofocus, manual focus, full-time DMF, yeah, crickets, that's gonna, yeah, exactly. We've got some other ones as well, modes, iris lock, and then on the other side, we've got the click for the ring. So obviously if you're doing video, you want to take the click off. But for photo, I want to keep it on so I can kind of feel if I'm moving it. And then we've got a very short throw. So here, when we're going from 70 to 200, it's actually really easy, and it's actually great to be, you can even do it with one finger, which I actually really like because I like to switch quite quickly and gradually. So if I have my finger or thumb on there, very, very easy to do. We've got a slightly smaller manual focus ring at the tip. Talking about the zoom ring, that's actually going to be really handy for when you're doing street. So if you want to suddenly zoom in and out, we're going to be doing a POV with this as well. So we're going to be doing a comparison between the Mark I and the Mark II. We're actually going to take a tripod and we're going to basically set them up so they have the same frame. We're not going to be really testing the autofocus, which is going to be one of the biggest, or I think one of the biggest differences in what I've actually seen already whilst using this lens a few times. With that, I'm going to be doing a POV, which will just be this lens. And that's when I'll talk through a lot of the autofocus features. But for this, it's more about image and what we can get out of it. So that's why we're going to use a tripod. We're going to set it up. We're going to switch back and forth between the A7R III. We're going to shoot on it. We'll then get them back, edit them, and show you guys the raw and the edited version so we can see the comparison. So we're set up here, we're on London Bridge. We've got the viewpoint of Tower Bridge. We've got a view of Tower Bridge. And basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna shoot this on the A7R III. We're gonna shoot a 135 on the Mark I, then we're gonna shoot a 200 on the Mark I, then we're gonna go on to the Mark II. We've got a tripod to make sure that everything hopefully is exactly the same. And then we're gonna put the raws and then the edited versions on here as well. So we've got a very gray day today. I was hoping for some like mad light to be hitting Tower Bridge. Okay, so that's 135. We're now just gonna zoom in. We're gonna do exactly the same thing again at 200. So that was f4. That's the main thing we need to keep the same, depending on obviously the amount of light we're letting in and how wide we are. I actually stepped up my ISO just one. I bumped it up to 250. So let's get the Mark II out. Let's not touch the tripod. Let's keep it in the same place. And yeah, we'll chuck this on. Firstly, I mean, as I said before, the weight difference is like insane. So we're gonna set up at 135 to begin with. We're gonna go f4. For me, I have the clickers on, obviously. So we're gonna shoot that. We're gonna focus on Tower Bridge, just like we did again for the exact same. ISO 200, slightly underexposing, because that's what I do. So I feel that the left-hand side of the frame sometimes a little bit empty. So I'm just waiting for something to come into frame. There's a boat coming in. See, oh, we got a bus. There we go, there's a bus. I just basically want to give them both the shots to have them nice and kind of even. They both look cool, basically, is what I'm saying. All right, go, little boat, go. So again, that's like a little tip, I guess, is to look for ways to fill the frame. It can be with a bus, it can be with a car, it can be with a boat, depending on where you are and what you're shooting. So now that boat is now in frame and kind of filling just a bit of a gap in the frame itself. So that's at 200. So that was a 135, now we're at 200. And we're gonna do exactly the same thing again. Perfect. I'd love to have a bus on the, oh, here we go, there's a bus coming. Go on, bus. Quick. Buses are always great because they just give that little bit of pop. Buses stops, traffic. But if there's no color in a frame, a bus can really make a frame because it just has that little bit of color to it. Sweet. So even though it's nice and gray, hopefully these look good on the screen now.
So this is a pretty cool spot. I actually did a campaign here with Paperboyo. Actually, I'll put a image up on the screen right now, but really nice little spot. It's actually usually very empty, so maybe we'll shoot Tower Bridge. I don't really know, I'm just gonna look at what frames we can kind of see really, and just basically set up so make sure we have everything the same for the two different lenses. Well, we're going back onto the original Mark I 70-200 G Master 2.8, and I'm basically just looking to see kind of what everything looks like. Whoop. Yeah, there's lots of glass up here, so it's not the place to come barefoot. Looking for some way to use the foreground. There's a little bit of greenery up here. If I put it into portrait, at 200 is actually quite a nice frame. If I just step forward a little bit. So hopefully you can just see, basically see the top of Tower Bridge peeking over. It's also good timing, so Tower Bridge is just getting lit up now. Usually it happens around 20 minutes before sunset, and then the second set of lights come on just as the sun is setting. So there's actually two sets of lights that go on for Tower Bridge. So for anyone that is wanting to shoot Tower Bridge for sunset and blue hour, yeah, there's two different kind of lighting setups. So actually, this is a good tip as well. I didn't know about this. Where's the button? Come around here, Andy. It took me about 2 years to understand what this button did, and actually it means you can then rotate. So now we're in landscape, and now we're in portrait. How mad is that? Maybe I'm just an idiot, but my mind was blown when I found out about it. All right, cool. So for this one, we're just gonna shoot it at 200. We're not gonna do different focal lengths because I just quite like it punched in. Otherwise it gets too wide, there's too much going on. So we're shooting it in portrait this time, 200. Setting's gonna be the same, it's 1/60th of a second. No, it's not. So it's 1/160th, f4, ISO 500. We're gonna shoot that now. And then we're going to do the same thing on the Mark II version without moving the tripod. Okay, so, and this is it. There's a bus coming, so I'm gonna wait for it. Nice. There's still no sunset, obviously, so we're gonna move to the next spot. So after walking around with it for a little while now, and also using it the night before, a few things that are obviously the weight. I mean, that alone is an insane upgrade. I don't really use many of these functions, the AF, MF function. Other than that, couldn't tell you what half of them do, to be honest. I'm not a technical guy, you guys know this. If it works, I use it. That's all that people need to know. And at the moment, it's working. Okay, so actually we're not moving. I just turned and I was like, that's quite a nice frame because there was two buses coming. We're gonna start off, oh no we're not. Let's keep it consistent. Come on now, consistency is key. We all know that with everything in life. Do anyone know what that is? What is that? Is that a church? Do you know what it is? That is what we're looking at. What is that? That was a question to you, Andy.
I want to say Westminster, but
no, we're gonna shoot at 200. We're gonna really punch in another 200 frame. A good test for the 200. Okay, so I've set everything up. We're here, we've got a bus coming along London Bridge. So I'm gonna wait for it to basically just get in the middle. Okay, perfect. So that's that one done. Okay, so another bus is coming. Multitasking, getting Instagram stories. So we're focused. We're gonna wait for this bus and we're gonna, oh nice, that's what I was looking for. Double bubble buses. Sick. That might have been a little bit underexposed, that one, but we had to wait a couple of minutes, and because now the sun has, what time is it? Is it set yet? The lighting has changed quite a bit. But we're gonna switch back to the Mark I, and we're gonna move and find another spot to keep shooting. So the next spot, we've got these leading lines. Hopefully we get some buses, Tower Bridge. It's got quite dark very quickly, so I'm actually gonna set up as quickly as possible here because I wanna get like ghostly figures walking through. So it's gonna be a case of kind of like a long exposure, but not like overly long. So also combining it with the buses coming through. I'll tell you my settings when I basically figure it out. I might actually take another like 4 or 5 steps back just to like open up the frame a bit more. Okay, so I'm set up, or at 70. I went back and forth a few times, but we've now got a bus, and I'm gonna just basically hope for a green light, or at least some space so the bus can kind of get moving here. Yeah, I mean, there's people, there's ghosts. There's a little bit empty in front, but there's this area here could do with something with someone in it, but it's a cool frame. I like it. So that's the first shot on the 70-200 Mark I, and now we're gonna get the second shot on this one, on the Mark II. Jeez. Never leave that bag on the floor, as Andy said in previous videos. That frame looks pretty much the same. I want people walking away from me, I prefer that. Ready, so, there we go. There's actually a person walking in the perfect point. There's a load of bikes, they're really annoying because they're kind of ruining the blurs. but let's check it out. Okay, sick. Yeah, we've got buses, we've got person walking. So for these, if you are trying to create a ghostly effect or the kind of the blurs with people, anything from 1 second to 2 seconds, you can really just experiment yourself really and see what you like. And yeah, obviously the longer the exposure, the more the blur will be. The shorter the exposure, the less of a blur there will be. Get creative really, see what you like. Yeah. So we're just gonna try and find one more frame for the comparison. Again, I mean, every time I pick up the old one now, the old Mark 1, I just go, oh, this is so fucking heavy. Versus now having this. As we were walking along Tower Bridge, we were looking at ways and places to shoot the shard, and I was saying to Andy, I want to find somewhere where it's like raised. But then we were walking along and I just saw like kind of a cool frame using the turret here at the Tower of London. London Dungeons. No, it's Tower of London. Tower Bridge, Tower of London. It's definitely Tower of London. Through the frame, basically using the turret, there's some sort of other thing next to it on the left. So if I frame it in the middle, I can get this lamppost out of the way and potentially, hopefully my mic's all right, potentially get a shot which is just a little bit different. It's funny, whenever you're a photographer, you probably notice this if you are a photographer, and if you're not, do you do this? When a photographer's taking a shot, everyone just looks and then they go and take it themselves. But we had those people who just literally stop and just take the exact same photo. But it happens all the time. It's quite funny. So we've now set up, we're at half a second, f4, ISO 250, and we are manual focus, 5 second exposure, because I was getting a little bit of movement, and it's basically because this is obviously maximum extended tripod. I'm just gonna refocus, double check it again, use that focus peaking. If you don't have your focus peaking on your Sony, I would highly recommend it. It's the best thing ever. I have mine red, 5 second exposure, Bosch. Sweet. This is the first time I've actually used the manual focus on here, and it's got a slightly different and thinner focus ring. So obviously that was your original focus ring, and now we've got this much smaller one, and that's to have made room, as I said earlier in the intro, it's to have made room for the aperture ring. I guess actually interesting, I mean, do you guys use an aperture ring when you have one on a camera? It's not something that I've like overly feel I need, because there's enough buttons where I can just switch and swap, but because for me it's not like such a big deal. Okay, so that frame should be bang on. I'm just gonna take a test shot again. Frame 1, frame 2, yeah, bang on, Bosch. One of the things I did just notice when I was using the manual focus to zoom in on the top of the shard there was that actually it was kind of, there was less room to, like I literally had to like try and tap it like, or move it like a millimeter, and it was like jumping, the focus would jump, and then I'd move it back like a millimeter and it would jump all the way back again. Versus on the other one, there was a little more room to play with. That might be because of me and I haven't actually set it up. I'm not really too sure, I have to play around with it, but that was just something I noticed just then and I thought it'd be worth noting to you guys. So we have just finished up now shooting on both versions of the Sony 70-200, version 1 and version 2. I'm really excited to actually see how they are in Lightroom. We shot on the A7R III, so we'll catch you guys back at mine.
So it's actually been a week since we recorded that video. I only had the lens for 3 days, and I wanted to give myself time to actually check the images out and see what we got and give it a really good comparison in Lightroom and show you guys obviously the raws and the edits. So you've seen those on the screen, but right now we're gonna go through and we're actually gonna punch into a few of them to really see the details. And when I was editing, although it's probably hard to see on the screen that you guys got to see it on, there is a big difference. So I'm gonna check through some of the differences right now. So we're in Lightroom, and one of the first things we're gonna bring up is the first shot we shot at 135 on Tower Bridge. You've got the raws and the edit on the screen right now, which you guys have already seen. Initially, you probably can't really see, but when you punch in, we'll put this on now, there's a screen grab of actually gone in, I don't know how many times, but it's pretty far in. And you can just see like the detail is just retained, and there's just a bit more separation, and it's just there on the Mark II versus the Mark I's a little bit sloppy, if that makes sense. And you can actually really see it there. Again, on a computer screen, hopefully you guys can see the difference, but on my screen, when editing, it's actually a very, very big difference there. If I zoom in and out on this, there's actually quite a big difference again, but it's just that little extra bit of crispness that those images have. And as I said, like I shoot a lot of architecture, I shoot a lot of buildings, and for me, I really wanted to test the comparison to what it would be like in real life situations. I don't shoot a lot of street, so in the POV that will be released very, very soon, you'll see that the autofocus on it was insane, and it's so much better than the Mark I as well. But that's something that I don't really use very often. So for me, the biggest comparison that I wanted to test out for this comparison video was what is it like when I'm shooting architecture, and I can see already the difference is next level. And then moving on to the last one, which is of the shard, the tip of the shard with the Tower of London in front as the foreground, kind of framing it. So again, like I've zoomed in on that quite significantly. Again, there's 2 screen grabs on the screen now, so you guys can see how far we've punched in. That was obviously on the A7R III as well, so I did want to give those extra megapixels and that extra resolution there, specifically for this reason. One of the things that I did mention at the end there was I was struggling with the manual focus, and it actually can be seen the manual focus on the Mark I is just as sharp, if not sharper, than my second shot. And that's just down to me because I was struggling, and I said that fine line between having it in focus and having it out of focus seemed to be finer than the line that's not so fine on the that's not so fine, and then the fine line that's not so fine on the Mark I. So that is the shots that we took in comparison with the 70-200 Mark I versus the 70-200 Mark II. And I'll let you guys into a little secret. I have actually pre-ordered the 70-200 Mark II, and that'll be with me as soon as it's basically available and Sony can send it to me. So I guess lots of people say, you know, at the end of a video like this, do you recommend the Mark I versus the Mark II? And I think literally because of the weight, for me, that's a massive selling point. And obviously the autofocus and the sharpness now after editing these, I really realized that actually how next level it is. So would I recommend it? Absolutely. If you've got the money to be able to spend and upgrade, great. And if you haven't got a 70-200 yet and you're looking to get one, that is definitely the lens to get. Big up for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's comparison video. If you did like it, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video very soon.